Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. So yeah, we need to talk about Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, because right now, this feels like a match not made in heaven. Now, don't get me wrong, for a while it looked like things were working. It really did. There were moments where you could see the vision. There were stretches where it felt like the Fever were building towards something special. But here's the thing. All Indiana had to do was take what they built in 2024 and add a little more structure. That's it. They already had a system. They already had an identity. They already had one of the best offenses in the league. You had Caitlin Clark creating everything. You had Kelsey Mitchell scoring at an elite level. You had Aaliyah Boston dominating inside. The pieces fit together. Was it perfect? No. Did it need adjustments? Absolutely. But it didn't need a complete overhaul. Then Stephanie White came in and decided she wanted to restructure everything, including the offense. Her argument seemed to be that the Fever had become too predictable. And look, I understand the concern. Every coach wants to evolve. Every coach wants to make their team less dependent on one style of play. But here's my issue with that logic. Most great offenses are predictable. Everybody knows what the best teams want to do. Everybody knows where the ball is going. Everybody knows the actions they're going to run. The difference is they're so good at executing those actions that it doesn't matter. The Golden State Warriors were predictable at their peak. The Las Vegas Aces have been predictable. Great teams don't hide what they do. They force you to stop it. And if teams can completely shut down your offense simply because they know what's coming, then you've got a talent problem. The Indiana Fever do not have a talent problem. We know this team can be close to unstoppable when Caitlin Clark is at her best. We've seen it. We've watched her take over games. We've watched her elevate everyone around her. We've watched Kelsey Mitchell thrive alongside her. We've watched Aaliyah Boston benefit from the spacing and playmaking. The ceiling is incredibly high. The problem is, they're not playing to that ceiling right now. And that's why more and more people who don't even have a personal investment in this debate are starting to ask questions. Now, to be fair, Caitlin Clark isn't blameless. No player is. But if we're assigning responsibility here, I think Stephanie White deserves more criticism. Why? Because Stephanie White chose this situation. Caitlin Clark didn't choose to be drafted by the Indiana Fever. Stephanie White knew exactly who Caitlin Clark was before she accepted this job. She knew what made her special. She knew how she played at Iowa. She knew what kind of offense had already been successful. So if you're choosing to coach Caitlin Clark, you don't walk into the building and completely change everything that made her successful. You don't suddenly decide she's a different player than the one we've all watched for years. You build around her strengths. You maximize what she does best. And right now, it feels like the Fever are trying to force Caitlin Clark into a system instead of building a system around Caitlin Clark. That's the disconnect. Now, let's address something else, because the conversation around Caitlin Clark has gotten weird, really weird. We've gone from legitimate basketball discussions to ridiculous narratives. People are asking if she's a bad teammate. People are calling her a locker room problem. People are throwing around words like cancer. Let's stop that immediately. Caitlin Clark is not a cancer. Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White don't hate each other. Sometimes players and coaches simply aren't the right fit. It happens all the time in sports. And let's not forget who we're talking about here. Caitlin Clark has spent her entire basketball career exceeding expectations. At Iowa, she consistently overperformed. She took teams further than anyone expected. Since she left, Iowa hasn't come close to replicating that level of success. That's not a coincidence. Great players elevate programs, and Caitlin Clark elevates every team she plays for. That's why this situation feels so strange, because when you watch Indiana right now, it just doesn't look natural. It doesn't look comfortable. It doesn't like a team maximizing its biggest asset. And that's why the trade conversation, as crazy as it sounds, isn't going away. Now, am I saying a trade is definitely happening? No, but I understand why people are talking about it, because sometimes in sports, addition by subtraction is real. If Indiana truly wants to play Stephanie White's style of basketball, maybe Caitlin Clark isn't the perfect fit. Maybe the Fever want to become a defense-first team. Maybe they want to slow things down. Maybe they want to play a completely different brand of basketball. If that's the case, then eventually both sides have to ask difficult questions. And let's be honest, the Indiana Fever had that us against the world mentality last season. They fed off the criticism.
They embraced being the most talked about team in the league. But now, that dynamic has changed. Angel Reese fans don't hate Chicago. People mostly laugh at the struggles. The Fever aren't the underdogs anymore. They're expected to win. And expectations change everything. So if we're talking about realistic trade destinations, there's one team that makes a lot of sense: the Golden State Valkyries. I've been watching the Valkyries, and their problem is obvious. They cannot score. Whatever you think about their defense, whatever you think about their effort level, they simply do not have an offensive engine. They have talented players, they have elite defenders, they have strong coaching, but they don't have someone who can organize an offense and create easy looks for everyone else. And that's exactly what Caitlin Clark does. Look at Janelle Saloun. She's one of the best young players in the world, but the Valkyries haven't figured out how to consistently put her in positions to succeed. They haven't unlocked her offensively. The same applies to several players on that roster. Now imagine adding Caitlin Clark. Suddenly, everything changes. The proposed package is straightforward. The Golden State Valkyries send their 2027 first-round pick, their 2028 first-round pick, and their 2029 first-round pick. They include the 2028 second-round pick they acquired in the Flaujae trade and their 2027 third-round pick. That's 5 draft picks. Then you add Cecilia Zandalicini. Cecilia Zandalicini gives Indiana immediate value. She's 6'2", she can shoot, she can defend, she's versatile, she can play multiple positions, and she's comfortable playing power forward. You could immediately slot Cecilia Zandalicini into the rotation. If you want more spacing, she's a better stretch option than Monique Billings, Sophie Cunningham, or Lexi Hall. You could even start Cecilia Zandalicini over Lexi Hall. Then you bring in Raven Johnson at point guard, you keep Kelsey Mitchell as your primary scorer. Suddenly you have more defensive balance. You've gone from a team searching for defenders to a team built around defense. And that's clearly the vision Stephanie White wants. This trade allows the Fever to become the version of themselves they seem determined to be. Meanwhile, the Valkyries get exactly what they need: an offensive superstar. Because, let's be honest, this team desperately needs one. They shot 5 for 33 from 3. That's not sustainable. Janelle Saloun and Cecilia Zandalicini take some of the most difficult shots in the league because defenses don't fear their playmakers. Caitlin Clark changes that instantly. Those contested shots become open shots. Those difficult possessions become easy possessions. Everyone benefits. And if Letitia Amiher is part of the deal, or if Kiara Linskins is included, the flexibility only increases. Maybe Yuste Yosite becomes part of the conversation. Maybe Demiris Dantas is included for salary purposes. There are multiple ways to make the numbers work, but the basketball fit is what matters most. Imagine this lineup: Caitlin Clark, Veronica Burton, Gabby Williams, Kayla Thornton, Kia Stokes. Off the bench, you have Janelle Saloun, Caitlin Chen, Tiffany Hayes, Kiara Linskins, and Letitia Amiher. That's a team built to hide Caitlin Clark's defensive weaknesses while maximizing her offensive strengths. You surround her with defenders. You surround her with shooters. You give her players who don't need the ball in their hands, and you let her create. That's how you build around a generational playmaker. Because defensively, the Valkyries can already compete with anybody. Their problem is scoring. Caitlin Clark solves that problem immediately. As for Indiana, they seem determined to become the 2025 Fever again, and maybe they believe they can't do that with Caitlin Clark. Whether you agree or disagree, that's clearly the direction they're moving toward. So if that's the case, getting Cecilia Zandalicini and 5 draft picks might make sense for both sides. You don't have to like it, you don't even have to believe it will happen, but you can at least understand the logic. Sometimes great players and organizations simply aren't the right fit at the right time. And right now, Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever feel like they're moving in different directions. But that's just my opinion.
Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White can make this work? Would the Golden State Valkyries be the perfect destination? And if you were the Indiana Fever, would you even consider making this trade? Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. I'll see you guys in the next one.